everybody, a joyful gathering. Welcome to our third outdoor service, and what a beautiful day God has provided for us. So our talk for this whole theme, this is our third out of 4 talks, has been based on a book by Ryan Holiday, The Obstacle is the Way. So whoever in their life up to this moment has faced an obstacle or 2 or maybe 3, huh? Who is facing 1 or 2 or 3 right now? If you are, then you are in the right place right now, because there is only the present moment, and this present moment you are here. And here's an important thing to know. Whenever life's obstacles get in our face, we always have choice. Let us never forget that. We can either be blocked by the obstacles, or they can stop us in our tracks, or we can say yes to them and then use them as stepping stones. Remember that when you're in the middle of an obstacle, to express our inherent and innate and divinely implanted greatness in higher and higher ways. We are at choice even in a pandemic, unemployment, political ideology, racial equality. And that choice is our focus of the month. And we are using that book, Obstacle is the Way. So this is a roadmap for our life journey. It's a roadmap to turning impediments into chances for empowerment, obstacles into opportunities to grow bigger in God, misfortunes into good, complications into expansion of consciousness. And if nothing has ever expanded your consciousness, I invite you to use this whole scenario of life as we are seeing it today as a way of using obstacles as a stepping stone and expanding our consciousness to know there is one divine power in back of all situations. So I hope that you brought a challenge to the table this month, and that you are applying these ideas to it to the best of your ability, because I sure know I am. According to Ryan Holiday, moving from impediment to empowerment takes 3 interdependent and interconnected disciplines that can be boiled down into 3 words: perception, action, and will. We have looked at how imperative a shift in our perception is. The whole first talk was on the power of perception. And I love this illustration in Holiday's book. This is what he writes. I like this. I think you will too. Sports psychologists recently did a study of the elite athletes who were struck with some adversity or serious injury. Initially, each reported feeling isolation, emotional disruption, and doubts about their athletic ability. Yet afterwards, each reported gaining a desire to help others. Additional perspective and realization of their own strength. And he continues, in other words, even fear and doubt they felt during the injury turned into greater abilities in those exact areas. It is a beautiful idea, and psychologists call it adversarial growth, or, I like this, post-traumatic growth. Yeah? A lot better than PTSD, right? That which doesn't kill me makes me stronger is not a cliche, but a fact. The struggle against an obstacle inevitably propels the fighter to a whole new level of functioning. The obstacle is an advantage, not an adversity. The enemy is any perception that prevents us from seeing this. And last week we talked about action, and not just any action. We talked about inspired action. And inspired action is, ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay. Action taken in service to our greater life. Action that comes from a higher place within us. Action that is part of the process, which is existing in the present, taking it one step at a time, not getting distracted by anything else. We must focus on what it is we desire in our lives. Obstacles, whatever it is, we can make that choice to see that this is a stepping stone to our higher good. And today we're going to look at the third of these three disciplines, remembering that they are all interconnected and interdependent. It is the idea of will. Today we're going to look at the right use of our will. So, what is will? Let me give you a couple of perspectives on will. First, from the Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes tells us about the right use of our will. Me and the bee. Okay. Nature is beautiful. Okay. Will, this is Ernest Holmes. Will is the conscious directive power of the intellect, and as such, has a very important place in the creative order. But in no case is it to be used as though it could force things to happen. The will holds attention to the mental viewpoint until creative power has time to work through the law of unfoldment. So what's that all about? What did it say? Well, some really valuable ideas about will. First, will is a very important piece of the creative puzzle, not to be ever discredited, but also not to be misused. Misuse comes when we try to use our will to force an outcome. Anyone ever try that?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it happens, but only lukewarm, and usually it doesn't. In that event, at best, the outcome we want will be very temporary. More importantly, we don't need to force anything. So important for us to know we do not need to force anything. There is a creative power that will do all the work. We must focus and hold on to our vision. And the correct use of will keep us steady and focused so that the creative process can unfold and a beautiful outcome will take place in the perfect timing. We talk about divine right order. It's not just talk, it's a way to live life. Everything is in divine right order. And I want to share with you a true story of the right use of will. I think this is a good one. It's from Ryan Holiday's book. But in it, you will see the ability to have a different perception of the obstacle. You will see humility, resilience, and flexibility. You will see inspired action. And what you won't overtly see, but what is happening through it all is the creative power of the universe behind the scenes, unfolding something truly remarkable and amazing. And I really, truly believe that. It's what our teachings tell us, and I believe that 100%. This is the story of one of the greatest entrepreneurs of all times, Thomas Edison. So this begins at age 67. Thomas Edison returned home early one evening from just another day at the laboratory. Shortly after dinner, a man came rushing into his house with urgent news. A fire has broken out at the Edison Research and Production campus a few miles away. Fire engines from 8 nearby towns rushed to the scene, but they could not contain the blaze. Fueled by the strange chemicals in the various buildings, green and yellow flames shot up 6 and 7 stories high, threatening to destroy and ultimately and ultimately did destroy the work Edison had spent his entire life developing. Edison calmly but quickly made his way to the fire. Through the now hundreds of onlookers and devastated employees, he was looking for his adult son. When he found him, he said, with childlike excitement, "Go get your mother and all of her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." "What?" the son said incredulously. Edison calmed his son by saying, "It's all right. We've just got rid of a lot of rubbish in there." Now, there's definitely more than a little rubbish in Edison's building. In fact, years and years of priceless records and prototypes and research were turned to ash. The buildings, which had been made of what was supposedly fireproof concrete, had been insured for only a fraction of their worth, thinking they were immune to such disasters. Edison and his investors were covered for about a third of the damage. His was a pretty remarkable reaction, wasn't it? I think so. But when you think about it, when you really, really think about it, there really was no other response that would have made any difference, right? Burning, it's burning. What should he have done? Wept? Plenty would have. Blamed someone for not turning off a Bunsen burner? Or extinguishing a cigarette? He would have been justified. Gotten angry at the manufacturer of the fireproof concrete? A common reaction would be to go sue them. Just given up. After all, he was 67 years old, right? And he'd done some pretty remarkable things already. No one would have thought any less of him if he just said, "You know what, I've had enough." 67, yeah. But he didn't do any of that because he wasn't done doing remarkable things. According to Holliday, and this is in the book, to do great things, we need to be able to endure setbacks, even tragedy. We've got to love what we do and all that it entails, good and bad. We have to learn to find joy in every single thing that happens. So Edison didn't do any of those things, the prior stuff. Rather, the entire experience invigorated him. As he told a reporter the next day, he wasn't too old to make a fresh start. And he said, "I've been through a lot of things like this. It prevents a man from being afflicted with ennui." So our vocabulary lesson of the day is, what's the definition for ennui? Weariness, dissatisfaction, and boredom. And here are some facts that might seem astonishing. This is where we see the creative power of the universe at work behind the scenes. Within 3 weeks, the factory was partially back up and running. Within a month, its men were working 2 shifts a day, churning out new products the world had not seen yet. And despite a loss of almost $1 million, which today would have been $23 million, Edison made in that year over $10 million in revenue, and that would be over $200 million in today's money. So Holliday wrote this: "He not only suffered a spectacular disaster, but he recovered and replied to it spectacularly. Edison rightly used his will and gave life a chance to rebuild, and he used his will." And you know, a lot of you know that the story, I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but you know, I left 10 years ago, 8 years ago, I don't know now. Life just unfolds. You know, I walked out of my home, the relationship of 42 years, and It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I packed one little bag. I had $3,500. And the universe proved to me in every step of the way it provided. In ways, there's no way I could plan any of this. I followed divine guidance, as Edison did. And I put one foot in front of the other and took inspired action. I taught 3 classes a week. That kept me centered. I was running Joyful Gathering Spiritual Center. That kept me nourished. And the universe provides. So I'm telling you, in the worst kinds of situations, there are infinite possibilities. So Edison used his will to do this, to stay with an empowered perception. That was not, this is a horrible tragedy. Rather, it was an opportunity to be humble, resilient. I'm not too old to start over, he said, and flexible. To move him into inspired actions. And we are going to add a 4th and a 5th right now that are the key to it all. He used his will to accept what is. His plant burnt down. There was nothing he could do to change it. And, this is really big, he used his will to face it with enthusiasm, even cheerfulness. Go get your mother and her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again. Your obstacle may not be as violent or serious as Edison's, or it might be worse, I don't know. But they are nevertheless significant and seemingly out of our control. Everything in life is really out of our control. We just think we have control. We don't. And we find that when something like this pandemic hits us. We have very little control, except we have choice, right? We can choose. So the key points to remember, and these, number 1 is to surrender to the divine power and the presence of the God within. And the many synonyms for surrender. And key points to remember are this. Yield. Give way to the flow of life rather than oppose it. Relinquish. To let go of resistance and to accept what is. To allow ourselves to choose differently. Resign. To resign ourselves to more of the goodness of God, expressing in and through and as us. Submit. To submit our wrong use of will, which is to force things to happen. Don't do that anymore. Don't force things to happen. Take inspired action and choose correctly. To the right use of will, which is keeping us mentally, emotionally, and physically on track. So that the creative power of life itself can unfold in beautiful and amazing ways in our lives. So those are some of the synonyms for surrender that they work for me. So, to bring this to a close this morning, and next week is going to be about taking those risks, what we define as risks. It's going to be a really good one. So let us this morning use our will in the right way, in the highest way, to surrender to the all good of life, knowing there is a power for good that is always supporting us, to really deepen into that faith, and to have the faith in divine intelligence, and to really believe that we are always safe and supported. And that's what I have for you this morning, my friends. So it is.
Reverend Margaret, thank you very much. That was awesome. I'd like to thank